Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 2018 State Assessment Test Security Ethics and Administration Training. Let's get started and talk about test preparation practices. Carefully read sections 3 through 6 in the 2018 Examiner's Manual. Provide students with the opportunity to learn the content and vocabulary included on the test if you are a teacher. Use state and district curriculum standards as a resource for instruction. Don't forget to integrate the teaching of test-taking skills within regular classroom instruction and assessment. Use interim assessment data to inform instruction. To help you get started, please review the information at the following link. As a reminder, this isn't required, but is recommended. Ensure that all accommodations provided to a student on the state assessment are done regularly on instructional assignments, as well as classroom, district, and standardized assessments. Assure that students are exposed to the KITE client testing format, environment, and practice test. Students can access these through the KITE client. Testing accommodations. Accommodations are tools and procedures in the area of presentation, response setting, and timing scheduling that provide equitable access during instruction and assessment for all students. For a child to receive an accommodation on the state assessment, it must be documented or coded in a child's IEP. Examples are displayed here, as well as in the test type accommodation sheet, which is located in your building Google Sheet. The accommodation or accommodations must be provided on a regular basis throughout the school year. If they are not, they cannot be provided on the state assessment. Information about the test type accommodation Google Sheet. Grade level and/or content teachers will complete this task in the Google Sheet under the TT Accommodation tab. I'll show this to you in the next slide. For all students that receive special accommodations and/or for those taking a different test type, such as the DLM. Specific details about accommodation codes and text-to-speech are located under the TT Accommodation Coding Reference tab in the Google Sheet. Here's an example of what the sheet looks like that a teacher will complete for testing accommodations. As a reminder, these are located under the red tabs along the bottom of the Google Sheet, and information about accommodations and how to code are located in the blue TT Accommodation Coding Reference tab. Testing accommodations continued. Something new for this year. If a student is coded for accommodations, the teacher no longer needs to submit the child's IEP or the assessment accommodation pages or from the IEP to the building test coordinator. But please make sure that you are prepared to show IEP evidence of the need for the accommodation or accommodations if requested by your district or building test coordinator. If a child is coded for text-to-speech, the form at the right must be completed and submitted with the IEP information to the building test coordinator. Just a reminder, revisions can be made to the test type accommodation sheet under the TT Accommodation tab if changes are needed or an IEP changes before test administration. If updates are made in the form in the Google Sheet, you must inform Holly so she can make necessary changes or updates in the KITE portal as well. A little bit more about testing accommodations. P&P protocol. DLM assessments. The special education teacher is responsible for entering the child's P&P information and each child's complete first contact survey in the KITE portal. General summative assessments. On February 26, Holly will enter the P&P accommodations into the KITE portal using the test type accommodation data that has been collected or entered by each building. Inappropriate use of accommodations. Reading to students any text, including isolated words in the reading ELA passage on the ELA test, is prohibited. Violations will result in the student being counted as not tested. Use of a calculator on the non-calculator portion of the math assessment is prohibited. This applies to all students, including 504 and SPED IEP students. If a student uses a calculator on the non-calculator portion of the assessment, the test will be invalid and the student will be counted as not tested. Use of teacher-generated or student-generated journals, notes, logs, etc. is prohibited on the assessments. Use of commercially made, teacher-made, or teacher-generated graphic organizers is also prohibited. Acceptable test practices. These are available to all students. These are not considered accommodations and are not documented in a child's IEP or other plan. If a student raises their hand, a teacher may pronounce a single word, a single distractor, or a single question that appears on the assessment. An exception is a teacher cannot pronounce any word that appears in the ELA assessment passages. This is not considered an accommodation and can be done with any or all students. The teacher should use professional discretion regarding the number of times a student may request. Students are allowed to use graph paper, blank paper, acceptable manipulatives, and other approved materials. In math and science, manipulatives that are routinely used in the classroom can be used during test administration. The manipulative must be chosen by the student. The teacher may neither suggest a particular manipulative nor insist that a manipulative be used. If you do have a question about whether a particular manipulative is allowed, please email me the question and I will contact KSDE to acquire an answer. In science, a reminder students can use a calculator on this assessment. It is available in the KITE client. In math, calculator usage. 3 through 5, no calculator is allowed. 6th through 8th grade will have a basic 4-function calculator and a scientific calculator available to them. New this year, students can use a personal calculator or they can access the one made available in the KITE client. 10th grade will have a basic 4-function calculator and a graphing calculator. Again, new this year, those students can use a personal calculator or can access the one through the KITE client. Calculators will not be made available on the computational portion of the assessment. Online tools are available to help all students as they take the KITE online assessments, and these are made available through the KITE client to your students. Moving on to ethical issues before testing. Teachers and test administrators must read sections 3 through 6 of the 2018 State Assessment Examiner's Manual prior to test administration and follow the guidelines and instructions during administration. As a reminder, remove or cover bulletin board displays, fact tables, charts, and diagrams, and other instructional materials that may give assistance or advantage during testing. Have appropriate manipulatives available for math and science. Student use is optional. Teachers will need to bring these to the testing location and will also provide them to staff members testing students in a separate location, for example, small groups or one-on-one situations. Do not use actual or altered test questions, clone or parallel, for practice or instruction. Teachers are not allowed to teach or review the content assessed indicators on the same day the content area assessment is being administered. As a general rule, once testing has started, all reviewing should cease. Prior to taking any assessment, encourage students can be offered. Please help students approach testing in a relaxed and positive manner. Prior to entering the testing environment, it is appropriate to go through test reminders with your students. Feel free to add additional reminders that are appropriate for you and your students. Once you have entered the testing environment, login information and scratch paper and/or graph paper can be distributed. Scratch paper cannot be graded and you cannot require that a student show work and/or take notes on this piece of paper. A little bit more about ethical issues during testing. Eliminate distractions such as bells, telephones, school intercoms, and the intercom system, etc. Your administration should be in charge of taking care of this. Don't rush your students. Give them as much time as they need to complete each section of an assessment. Actively monitor the testing session. Moving around the room encourages students to focus on their own work. Do not coach or cue students in any way during test administration. This includes gestures and facial expressions. Do not respond to questions during test. that would help the students to understand the question, aid them in responding to an item, or encourage them to edit, redo, or change a response. Do not ask students how they got an answer. Do not do anything that would let the student know whether an answer is correct or not. Students may use blank paper to show and check their work. This must be collected and destroyed upon completion of the entire test. When students are finished, the proctor should verify the end review screen upon completion of the test to see that all questions have been answered before a student exits or ends the testing session. The proctor may not go back and review each question individually with the student. Now, moving on to ethical issues after testing. Make every attempt to test students that were absent during the scheduled testing window. This is important. Reactivation. To have a student reactivated, the following information must be entered into the Google Sheet under the Reactivation tab by the teacher. I'll show this to you in the next slide. The information that has to be collected is the student name, grade assessed, subject area, part session, reason for reactivation, date, actual testing time, and the person requesting reactivation. Once entered, the test proctor teacher must let the building test coordinator know that a student needs to be reactivated. He or she will then reactivate them in Kite. This is an example of what the reactivation log tab looks like, and it is in purple at the bottom along the Google Sheet. This will be filled out by the teacher. A little bit more about ethical issues after testing. Reactivation information. New this year, if 90 minutes plus have passed since a child was logged in and they have not completed a part or session, the test session no longer has to be reactivated before they can complete the part or session. The student can simply log back in and continue taking the test. When leaving a test session that is in progress, the student or teacher can enter the Control-Alt-Delete or press the Control-Alt-Delete button, or just simply shut the computer down. Do not end the test session. If a student ends the test session without having an adult check to see if the student actually completed the session, the student must be present when the test session is reactivated. This must also be recorded in the reactivation log. If a student appears to be answering randomly or isn't showing effort, immediately end the test session for the student. Contact the building test coordinator about the student's test session, and once information has been entered into the reactivation log, the session may be reactivated and the student allowed to complete the assessment. If all test parts are completed and a teacher wants to reactivate a student test part, this must be approved by Holly. The test coordinator may not reactivate a student test part. The only exception to this rule is for students who have not answered all test questions contained within a test part as noted in the Kite Portal Monitor status area. Test security information, materials, and computer screening. Except where explicitly allowed and described in the test administration manual, electronic materials during testing may not be printed or created. Do not store or save on computers or personal storage devices any items. Test items may not be shared via email or other file sharing programs as or be reproduced by any means. Do not take pictures of assessment information with camera or screenshots, etc. Do not review test or analyze test items before, during, or after the assessment is administered. Do not discuss any specific test items on the test with students or colleagues before, during, or after administration of the test. Do not construct answer keys so the test could be scored locally. Do not write or reproduce test materials. Test materials may not be copied, reproduced, or paraphrased. Storage of paper, pencil, braille test materials. Make sure that they are checked out and or distributed immediately before the testing session. Collect test materials immediately following the testing session and return them to the building test coordinator. Copies of the paper, pencil, or braille assessment will need to be secured and locked in the test coordinator's office. The following items or documents must be kept in the test coordinator's office: paper and pencil braille assessment forms, the test type accommodation schedule, and reactivation logs. These are now located in your building Google Sheet. And then copies of the IEP pages with other required documentation for the test text-to-speech accommodation. Report any breach of security, loss of materials, failure to account for materials, or any other deviation to your building test coordinator, who will then report it to the district test coordinator, who will then contact KSDE. How to report item issues. Tremendous effort goes into the review of the state assessment items, but occasionally there is an error or a typo which gets by. Both KSDE and CETE want to be informed of item issues for review and follow-up. If an error is verified, it will be corrected, and if necessary, student scores will be adjusted. However, due to test security issues, we expect administrators and teachers to abide by the test security administration guidelines in the examiner's manual. Therefore, if a student questions the correctness of an item, follow the procedures below. First, to the student, repeat the information from the directions, teacher print directions, or kite directions. Choose the answer that you think is best. There is one correct or best answer to each question. Carefully read the question and work the problem. Second, collect the following information as a teacher and forward it to your building test coordinator, who will then send it to the district test coordinator. You need the state ID number to aid in test identification. Do not share name, building, or district info. We also need the content area and grade of the test, the section or sessions or part, and the question number. Please do not forward the item stem, any answer choices, or narrative descriptions of the item via email. These are live, secure test items, and do not take pictures of them to send. However, it is helpful to know what the issue is. For example, no right answer, multiple correct answers, A, C, are both correct. A word is misspelled, the sentence is grammatically incorrect. When it comes to a problem with reading passages, when possible, please provide the issue and the paragraph number and the sentence number within the paragraph. For example, 12 paragraph starts with the dog. Third sentence, the cat's name. Issue, the name of the cat is misspelled. Moving on to ticket and login procedures for the state assessments. Students will use the same username and password for all assessments. The login tickets will be printed and distributed by your building test coordinator. Students will also be given a common daily access code. The building test coordinator will retrieve the daily access code for each test from the Kite Educator portal. They will enter those daily access codes into the Google Sheet under the Daily Access Code tab, as seen to the right. The test proctor will then provide the access code to the students so they can log into a specific test session. The daily access code will expire at 5 p.m. every day. However, if a student does not finish or is unable to take the test on a certain day, the next day's access code will enable access to the assessment. Building testing schedules. Specific information about the assessment schedule for your building is located in the Google Sheet under the Master Schedule tab, as seen to the right. Building test coordinators will enter building test schedule information into the Google Sheet. The deadline for this is before the first day of testing in your building. As a reminder, if changes are made with the schedules must be updated in this Google Sheet by your building test coordinator. Training completion sign-off. After watching this training video and reading sections 3 through 6 of the 2018 Examiner's Manual, please follow the directions below. Licensed staff, you'll need to open the training sign-off form. Type in your first and last name, school name, and date. If you have questions about ethics administration or test security, type them into the right side of the Google Sheet. Classified staff. A sign-off sheet will be available in the office of your building test coordinator. Please sign this form by writing your name, providing your signature, and the date. If you have questions about ethics administration or test security, please just email Holly Francis with your questions and she'll get back with you. As a reminder, by signing this form, you're agreeing to abide by all policies, procedures, and regulations set out by KSDE with testing and the information shared by your district test coordinator.